Hi, Seth.
Hello.
Good to see
How are you?
you. It's good
Good
to
to see
see you.
you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
today's Saturday. It's the 22nd of October. I'm recording this from France, and you're in New York City. I just
Yep.
would like to tell everybody that we are old friends. I've known this gentleman since he was a young man.
Yes.
I used to just want to take care of him, make him sandwiches, and make sure he was eating enough. I've seen you grow as a human being, and now
Literally. Yeah.
you're a dad, right?
Yes, I
Married,
am.
got
Yep.
a
A new
dad,
dad now.
got your child. Yep.
My wife and I had our first baby. He's 2 months old and just completely precious, and we're totally obsessed with him. So that's kind of been my life for the last 8 weeks.
Mm, mm.
Um, but it honestly is such an inspiration. Oh gosh, I'm gonna make myself cry. I'm I've always wanted to be a dad, and to be married to my wife Lizbeth. She's a really amazing woman and is so supportive of what I do for work, which is I work in
Mm.
script development and film development, and I also work with a lot of books because we adapt a lot of books, and that's um, not how I came to know Jacqueline, but reading her book, then I
Mm.
came to know her writing. And to have somebody support a creative is really a big endeavor because your heart goes into it. Jacqueline, your heart
Mm.
goes into every project, and it can be a heartbreaking business. And um, she's my rock, and having this baby along with us is just amazing. So it just makes me
Yeah.
more excited for the stories, and I want to use my time even better.
Hmm.
And Jacqueline's had the privilege of seeing me. You might hear my baby a little bit
Oh, bless
there.
him. That is a teeny,
um,
teeny baby.
he is a teeny baby. But yeah, Jacqueline has seen me grow in my ability to use my time better and to read works more closely and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and to jump into the custodians because that's what we're here for. This book.
Well, wait, I want to
Oh,
make one comment. I
okay.
want to make one comment
I
right
will let
here
you
and
know.
now that people
Go
need to
ahead.
hear about you is that you are a young man, but you are a man of stature already, and I'm going to start crying because you are a man of God. Your spiritual life, your home life, your family life, your friendships. I know during confinement when you were helping and supporting people, you are a good human being. And so for you to partner with me as my editor on this project, uh, on the Custodians, it's a four-book series. The book one is completed after 10 years and many, many rewrites. And Seth came in, I would say about, was it 3 years ago? Two
It
and a
was at
half years
least
ago?
three. Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
So we've been at this for 3 years. So you can imagine
Yes.
the rewrites, the conversations. Seth has really, he's just, I cannot even tell you how many ways that he has come in and just gone, move that, do this. So I'm not going to get into the technique just yet, but I guess we should tell people a little bit about the story,
Yes.
right? So I can take it off, take it from the beginning. It's my mum is a horror aficionada. She loves horror, and so when we were kids, she would tell us horror stories. And she retired and moved to the French countryside, and she lives down this little country lane surrounded by a brooding dark medieval forest. I kid you not. They still hunt the sanglier, the wild boar there. And in the fall and the colder, darker nights, she began to tell a story to anyone who would listen about the tunnels and the creatures and strange things happening in the forest. And she started to talk about the Second World War a little bit. So this is a story that goes from the present moment. It goes back in time to the Second World War, where a lot of things happened during this part of France called Rousignac as a sleepy little town. So think Stephen King, sleepy little town with a big secret, set in a rural environment. They were occupied by the Nazis. So something happened and it affects the present day. So that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yep.
Um, I took over. I did. Mum gave me the first draft, and I said, "Mum, do you mind if I work with this?" And she said, "No, just go for it." And then the rest has been this journey. So I think that's enough for me to say. Maybe you could just say your first thoughts about it.
Yeah, I think that's great for setting the stage. And so when I picked it up, immediately you have it's a big world. It's a big world with a lot of characters, but you never really lose track of anything or anyone. And it just is almost this spinning force, like a funnel where it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until things are all twisted together,
Mm,
and you realize how the past has affected the present, and they come together in ways that are amazing. And for me, I picked it up, and right away we meet the tourists, which are
mm.
Tom and Catherine,
Catherine Grayston, yep.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're from England, and they've come to the French countryside. And right away, we jump into a scene that is a marriage on the rocks and a couple trying to save their marriage, uncertain about one another,
Mm,
totally physically and emotionally disconnected. And this, 2 weeks of a summer in the French countryside are going to save their marriage.
right.
Um, that's the hope. And little do they know that they've stumbled upon a town where something strange is happening, and the house that they've rented seems to be in the midst of these medieval woods.
Mm,
Strange things happen, and the town might just be in on it.
right. That
And
penny
that
drop.
that was so engaging to me, where I immediately felt something and I understood something about these characters and their marriage and where they are emotionally. But then you have this plot thing that is what is happening beneath the surface,
Hmm.
and is everybody in on this?
Right. You can't believe it.
And you can't believe it. And then the journey continues on, and then you take us into the past,
Mm,
and we meet these French resistance fighters. And where we start with them is just in the midst of their fight against the Nazis, but
mm,
also just the midst of their lives.
hmm.
And there are just scenes from their marriages and their families as they struggle
Mm,
with the Nazis, who are just, we all know what they've done, but you experience it in a new way. And especially as non-French readers, I think it's fascinating to learn and heartbreaking to learn just what happened in France and to the men of the towns,
mm,
and how they were ripped away from their
hmm.
families, or they were killed, or they were sent away, and the young men, and it just gets younger and younger, and the
Hmm.
women and the children are left alone and they have to fight in their own way. And then to the way that you intersperse that sort of historic
Mm,
viewpoint with what's happening in the present day and this mystery that's slowly uncovering and the danger that is constantly mounting. I mean,
hmm.
it's just everything that I could want in a story. And for me, it was, this world is so clear,
Mm,
and these characters are clear and they're engaging. And so in some ways, I it didn't make the work easy, but it made
mm,
the work really fun, and it made the work possible, I would like to say, because the first hardest thing is to understand your world. And I think you did that immediately. And I never had, an issue with, like, what is this world about? No, I understood the world. I could
mm,
smell the French countryside.
hmm.
The hard part was understanding exactly who the characters are, or
Right.
more revealing
Hmm.
that, because you can't just say it. And that's
Mm,
great writing is to learn who these people are through their words and their actions. And that's kind of the journey we were taken on. So I think that I mean, so you've told us this inspiration for through your mother, which I think is really amazing, and I love that. And yes, there are horror elements, which is another exciting aspect of this, as well as romance and mystery and
mm,
a bit of crime.
hmm.
It's got a lot of things working together. So what was your inspiration, or how did you feel? Did you decide right away to go into our story through the tourists, because they're kind of our a bit of
Mm,
our protagonists. It's a
hmm.
wide-ranging story. They're kind of our protagonists, but they're definitely our vessel to take us into this
They're the
world.
portal in into the
Right.
world. And what is so awful is that in the beginning you don't know what's going on. And when you do know what's going on, it's too late. And it's like, oh my God, like this could literally, it's a fear I think that is realistic. And that's my mom is a great fan of Stephen King. And one of the things, and I've read a lot of King, one of the things he does brilliantly is that he will, it's like he'll bring you into a fear that 9 times out of 10 doesn't happen, right? But in his books it does happen. And there, but by the grace of God go I, right? So you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're in
Yeah.
the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're trying to fix your marriage, trying to fix your life, trying to get on with things, and oh, this just happened, and that just happened, and now we got a bigger problem. Now we got a bigger problem. How do we get out of here? Now, the Graystons, the couple, the vehicle for the story to move it forward, that was my mother. So you got to remember, my mother was the original creator. She would tell the story. It was based on friends of hers, and I took that as a vehicle to, if you will, prise open the box a bit more, because with my mum's story, it was it was these two characters, and then there was this horrific unfolding of monsters running around. And what I wanted to do was I could see the potential of the mystery, of the thriller, of the what is really going on. And I knew that if I couldn't use the couple to further that story along, to, at least to halfway through the book, I'd have to bring in two other characters to work together. I wanted it always to be duos. You probably noticed that there are people that work
Yes.
together. It's
Yes.
there's nobody working by themselves here. So
Right.
you've got these interconnected relationships that always present their own difficulties, right? So we've got these two Americans, and a friend of mine said, you got to put some Americans in. And I'm like, I absolutely do have to put some Americans in there. But I
Yep.
thought it would be fun to have two guys that have in what do you call it, investigative skills. I
Yes.
didn't want two buffoons going there because their friend disappeared. I wanted them to go there with ideas about forensics, with knowing, reading body language, profiling people, patterns of behavior. They've got evidence that this couple disappeared in this town, so no one can deny it. But of course, everybody does.
Mhm.
And I wanted just to say that I also live in rural France. I live in a place like Rousignac. That's where this story is set. And guys, if you ever do come to Southwest France, you'll know that so much of rural France, you turn a corner, and I would not be surprised that there was a German tank coming towards me. In other words, time has stood still here. They don't bulldoze over stuff the way we do in the States. So so the ghosts of the occupation are always here. There are so many things. I'm going to post some pictures on Instagram. I found some air raid sirens the other day on top of just a granary that's still there. And it looms over you and casts a shadow on a square that you're standing in. You're like, my God, that's World War II. So and we also have a lot of friends here who are elderly now, but were children during the occupation. So cut long story short, what I was able to do is to feel that time as a writer was, and I spent a lot of time talking to people. What was it like to be occupied in the countryside, right? Not Paris, in the
Yeah.
countryside.
Yes.
So there are little, and I'll wrap this up, but there are little things like uh, they would hide their chickens in the forest. They would hide their prize cow, pigs. They knew the forest, so the locals know the forest like the back of their hands. The invaders don't.
Right.
So that comes into play when you then have a situation that a dark thing that goes into the forest, because of course that's the locals know the forest. So it's really the strangers, the foreigners that get the raw end of the deal. But you know
Yeah.
what I have to say, the thing I like most about this book developing it was the conspiracy of the secret. I love that
Yes.
aspect of it.
Oh yeah. I think it's just the thrill of that mystery and conspiracy and wondering, does everyone know? Do a few know? You know,
Yes.
uh who is propping up this conspiracy
And
and
why?
I think and why and I think what's so fun and fascinating um is that in the present day the Greystons are experiencing something, this beautiful French countryside home in the midst of these woods that are thick and
Mm,
they can't even step foot in them because they would just be lost immediately. But there's something going on
hmm
and they're trying to understand it. And all the locals are not helping them understand it. And if anything, are trying to push
hmm
them away or push them in another direction or distract them. And you wonder why. And there's all this smoke and mirrors going on. And it's done in that way where they feel they're made to feel a little crazy
Yeah, them.
because
Yeah,
they're hearing noises or seeing
people are
things. And
trying
when they ask
breaking in.
questions, it's, oh, this happens or that happens. There's an
hmm
explanation for everything. And it kind of makes sense, except you saw it. You heard something. You really did. You're not crazy. And then when we go into the past and World War II, when the Nazis are occupying, the monsters are not in the shadows.
hmm
Monsters
hmm
are in your face,
That's right.
and that evil is there. And in
hmm
so many ways, I mean, I think they're both incredibly terrifying. Um, it's scary to watch, the resistance fighters trying to protect their families and continue their resistance work while a Nazi officer has his boots up on the table.
Yeah.
The resistance fighter's wife is serving him coffee
hmm
and breakfast, and he has to sit there and give a reason for why he was out of the house this morning.
hmm
That isn't going to reveal where he was because there was a gunfight.
hmm
And if he says he was too close to that, the officer will ask him if he heard bullet shots.
hmm
And if he says he was somewhere else, what has his wife said where he was? And just the tension is so high
hmm
in past and present. And that makes the scenes, just every chapter, really, really engaging. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Thank you for saying that. I think for me, the pressure is on throughout the whole book. And I think that if there was a theme, it is that people live double lives. And when you live a double life, when you're having to hide something or live, with a different identity in the midst of something awful, it's excruciating. It's hard, it's stressful, and it takes
yeah,
something from you. It really either makes you a better person or it really can destroy you as a
yes,
human,
yes,
right? So the idea of a secret being kept, and it spans 60, 70 years, and it's still going on. With this kind of story, these other, then you've got the detective, then you got it was actually, and this is where you really came in because I needed another pair of eyes. I needed someone to keep track of everything
yeah,
because there were moments where I let the cat out of the bag too soon. And that's a spoiler, right? You can't have that
right.
because it's over.
Especially with the mystery and the thriller aspect of it, it was really, really important to me that you reveal certain information at exactly the right time. whether that's in the past,
Mm-hmm.
because certain things that we learn in the past start to inform what's happening in the present,
Mm.
or in the present, someone revealing some bit of information. And I think what was so fun about working on this book was that I was jumping back and forth between, okay, in this chapter where the couple are talking and it's this aspect of their marriage, I think you're saying this, and I want to understand what's going on with them emotionally, and we're sort of getting into the minute details of their relationship.
Mm.
For the Americans, this was a huge thing. So one of the investigators is on the spectrum. And
Mm.
I had a friend in high school who had Asperger's, and it's a really interesting dynamic um, in conversation, in just their quirks and the way they think and the incredible mind that they have
Mm.
and incredible focus on certain things, but then socially, you know, difficulties socially, and just I wanted to understand why they were friends, and then to understand how they interact, and then how that interaction goes out into the world.
Mm.
We dove into those details, but then also I'm thinking on a bigger scale, okay, this is where we're headed. This is where the mystery is revealed. So you need to order these chapters in the right way.
Exactly. That was the big
Um,
cut. That was the big not cut.
that
It was the
was
big reshuffle. And I'll
big
be
work.
really honest with you, as when you've been working on a manuscript for 10 years, 10 years beginning to end, and someone says, you know what, we're going to take this, we're going to move it here, and don't worry, because we're going to have this. And I just was like, ah, you know,
Yeah.
whoa. And I just was like, okay, deep breath, trust the process, and Seth knows the timeline. So we did. We moved, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, especially if you're dealing with more than one time period,
Mhm.
is to move things so that people. Well, why don't you tell people why you made that decision? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was it's important to introduce your characters pretty early on and to get a feel for them. So in that aspect, we needed to meet the tourists. We needed to understand who they are and what's happening in their marriage, and then what's happening with them on this vacation. And then we needed to meet the French resistance fighters. And we needed to understand what's going on with them and where they're at with fighting the Nazis and their home life and everything. But then the mystery is something that pushes us along in the story.
Mm.
So getting answers too quickly, it won't kill things, but it'll lessen some tension. And
Mm.
it's so important to keep that tension high in a story, especially when you're dealing with secrets.
Mm-hmm.
You want to hold off, just hold off on revealing that secret as long as you can,
Right.
and then reveal it at the right moment. Um, and I think in a lot of ways, my film background really kind of helped me to see that more clearly, just because in a film it's a much shorter, it's 120 pages of a script, and it has acts, and it's a little more clear where you kind of do things. um, so it was harder to see it in novel form, but when I took a step back, and I at some points I was literally counting the page numbers between, like, when we last were with our French resistance fighters and the
Mm-hmm.
next time, or when we see the Americans and when they come to France, and when they interact with these certain locals that the Greystons interacted with, the tourists.
Exactly. They were like hashtags, right?
Yeah,
In the
and if we
book.
can, right, and if I can reveal, the Greystons go missing,
Yes, they do.
and that's actually what
Yeah.
brings in these Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing is that they work in and around law enforcement, but they're not or one works for New Scotland Yard. He's an
Mm.
American working for New Scotland Yard, and the other is more of a consultant.
Hmm.
Um,
John Jay, yeah.
yeah, and he's the consultant is the man who's on the spectrum, and he's just so brilliant that people bring him in,
Yeah.
but he's also incredibly hard to work with,
Yeah.
um, which makes him a really fun character.
He's a blunt instrument in a town
Yeah,
that wants to keep its mouth shut, right?
yes. And so and they're Americans. I mean, this is what's so fun. The British couple, both in their interactions with one another and with the town, there's a little bit of holding back in
Yes.
that kind of British way. And you feel it in the dialogue and the emotions. And they want to just say, I know you're lying.
Yeah.
No, you're lying. We're not crazy. But they also don't want to upset the locals. And
Hmm.
there's this tension there. And then when the Americans come in, they know their friends were here. They know the Graystons were here. They know they're missing and there's something odd. And the answers that the locals are giving don't add up.
That's right.
So somebody's lying.
Yeah. And their action,
And they're
they just,
gonna call it, they're
yeah.
just gonna say it. And they're that brash American,
Hmm.
strutting in and
Mm.
saying, what's going on here? And
Yeah.
that's to get them into
It gets them into
trouble.
trouble big time, but
It gets them into
it
trouble.
creates a problem for
But
the
but it
locals.
also starts to put a crack in this
Exactly.
facade. I would say the locals have built a great facade
Mm.
of a quiet, sleepy little town. And the Americans, and these tourists are accidentally a
Hmm.
threat to it, and the Americans are purposefully a threat to
Hmm.
the facade.
Yeah, it's two forces that come, and neither side's going to budge, and I love that about these two guys. They're two, they're in your face.
Yeah.
And I want us to say to people that the way the book is laid out, that the chapters, you've got sections like they're called the tourists, you got sections called the Americans, you got sections called the Germans. So one of the things I do invite people to do is eventually is you can read the chapters based on the tag hashtags if you want the tags, and get to dig deeper into the story because, like I said, there's two or three stories really deep running here. But we're almost out of time, Seth, and I just wanted to say that what I wanted to do was ask you, tell me who your favorite character is in this book.
Oh, um, I would have to say, uh, I'll need a little help with his last name, which is French. And I am very American. Daniel Malraux.
Daniel Malraux. Wait.
Malraux.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So he is a resistance fighter, and we meet him. He's a young man. Um, I guess I see maybe a bit of myself in him. He's, newly married. I just celebrated 3 years 2 days
Yeah.
ago. And there, and he is just he's so great. He's a good man, and it's heartbreaking to see him caught up by these occupiers,
Mm.
and then to see his life in danger and him being pulled away from the love of his life.
Mm.
And getting to meet him, we want to fight alongside him. We want to fight the Nazis, and then our heart is broken as he's pulled away from his love, as I said. And then there's just a really interesting way where he ties into the present day
Mm.
that I can't speak upon, and you're just going to have to get the book and read it. But I think
Yeah.
it is so brilliant, and
Mm.
that's what really, really sold me on this book,
Mm.
was that the characters are amazing, the mystery is incredible, the horror just grows in a way. It's not a jump scare.
Mm. No, not at
Little
all.
It's a trickle, and it
Mm-hmm.
just grows. It's like I said at the beginning, it twists and it twists and it twists and it
Mm.
twists until it's all intertwined. And
Hmm.
when the past is connected to the present, and when
Hmm.
you understand that, it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And it also raises a lot of questions about what's going to happen next, because
Yeah.
as Jacqueline said, this is the first of three books,
Mm.
and they've been trying to keep the secret of this town, trying to keep a lid on it. But if the
Hmm.
secret really gets out, and you think about the ramifications in the world,
Mm.
I mean, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's
violent.
bad. It's
It's
bad
bad. It's, yeah,
for
and
everybody.
for everyone.
Mm.
But I love and as you said, the chapters are laid out so clearly, because we've talked about a lot of characters. We've thrown out tourists and Americans and
Yeah.
the locals and the Germans,
Mm.
but your chapter headings always set it clear who we're talking
Who are you
about.
looking at right now? I
Yeah,
did that for my own sanity.
I think it's, yeah,
Yeah.
it completely works. It makes the structure. I mean, I've read several drafts of this, and each time I pick it up and it's a page turner.
Mm.
It's
Thank
me on
you.
my iPad, just swipe, 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 swipe. I'm amazed. I'm a fairly slow reader, um, but I can really churn through this book.
Well, thank you for saying that's very generous of you. And like I said, you've had a huge part in so many aspects of this story. And as you know, Seth, it's only just begun. So book one, just so you guys know, it's a 4 book series. It sets the stage. It really does set the stage. And it is there's really no end. So it's going to keep keep going through for 4 books. Um, and we're both excited really about where these characters are going to go next, actually. So I want to thank you so much for your time,
Yes.
especially as you're a new father. And yeah, if there's anything you'd like to say to close.
Um, just for lovers of horror and thriller, this is a book for you. For lovers of crime and mystery, this is a book for you. And for lovers of historical fiction, this is a book for you. And as a filmmaker and developer, I mean, I immediately saw just a 7-season TV show. Like it's that kind of scope.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
sitting here
agree.
telling you I could understand every character, and sometimes it took some work, but we've cracked it, and Jacqueline has written so beautifully every single character that
Mm.
every
Thank
character
you.
matters and every page matters, which is always my criteria. And that's all of our meetings, our 2 hour long Zooms talking about
Yes,
everything, where I would say, not good enough on this page. This chapter,
exactly.
not good enough,
You really
because
held me to task on so many of them.
we needed to build to this, where
Yeah.
you, the reader, can pick it up and understand every character, and they
Mm.
build on each other. And I just love how digestible this massive world is. And like I said, it has all those genres. And so lovers of all of those books are going to be
Mm.
thrilled by this
Mm.
book. And you'll get into something maybe you wouldn't have picked up before.
There you
And you'll
go.
definitely be buying a plane ticket to France.
Uh, well, I was going to end by saying monsters do exist and they are one vacation away, which is the tagline. And
Yes.
yeah, so vacations will never be the same. And I would definitely say bring this book on your vacation.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes.
Just that'll spike things up a
Yes.
little bit for you. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Seth. I so appreciate you as a human
Of
being
course.
and for your skills as an editor. And I thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Take care.
See ya.